I'm at the Highline School District Maintenance Yard where Governor Jay Inslee is about to talk to us about a plan to not only rein in gas prices, but to what he is saying will rein in excessive profits, as he calls them, from oil companies who he says are gouging us and destroying the environment at our expense. Now, we've also already heard back from the Western States Petroleum Association, so at the end of this video, I will post their statement.
Good morning, beautiful morning in the state of Washington. I'm glad to be in the Highline School District where I went to Cascade Junior High School and Sherwood Elementary School where I learned science. And it's exciting to be here because we have 4 electric buses which are not polluting, they're not burning gasoline or diesel, and they're using the power of electricity to get our kids to school in a clean way. They represent both the future and the present of the state of Washington. We are transforming our economy to run the one that runs on clean energy and reducing outrageous costs for oil and gas. And that's what we're here to talk about. There are 2 things that are going on that are unfortunate and unacceptable to the state of Washington. One is oil and gas pollution is attacking our state and attacking our children's future, and indeed attacking the entire nation and planet. The disasters that we have experienced around the world, fires, heat domes, 1/3 of Americans today are under heat dome warnings, enormous flood events, melting of the ice sheets. Our nation, our state is under attack by the pollution that comes from the oil and gas industry. And Washington State will not allow that. We intend to defeat climate change. We intend to rein in the terrible pollution that the oil and gas industry is causing across our state and our nation, and we won't stand for it. And that's why I'm proud to say Washington State has a suite of policies which are moving away from pollution and towards clean energy. But unfortunately, those policies are under attack. They're under attack by the very polluting industries that are damaging the health of our children. And we're here today to hold those polluting industries, the oil and gas industry, accountable. Something else is going on. The very industries that are causing this massive pollution are today gouging us in their oil and gas prices and trying to tell us that unless they continue to be able to gouge us for their prices, that they're going to go bankrupt. The spokesperson for Chevron said the other day about the fact that we're holding them accountable for their pollution, that it's not their job to go bankrupt. Well, I don't have a Nobel Prize in economics. I only have a Bachelor of Arts in economics from the University of Washington. But I can tell you the oil and gas industry is not going bankrupt. Look at the profits they have made on our backs in the last couple of years. This is a graph showing the profits of this industry. If you look at the red, which was Exxon Oil, just as one example, they were making profits of $2.7 billion back in 2021 in the first quarter. Now in the first quarter of this year, they made $11.4 billion. They have had massive increases in profits. Their pricing has been rapacious. You know what they're doing with that money? They're giving it to their CEO. The CEO of Exxon Oil made $35 million a year last year, while he's jacking up our prices through the roof. We have had a belly full of this industry polluting our skies, damaging our children's health, and now making us pay twice with these absurd profits and absurd prices. And today we're saying this: we in Washington State will hold the oil or gas industry accountable for their pollution, and we will hold them accountable for their price gouging. And we're here to announce that this January, we will be taking action to introduce bills to both forcing them to show us their books in total so that we can really assess how bad they're gouging us. We will be introducing bills first that demand transparency of this industry. And second, we will have bills that will hold them accountable if they in fact are found to be price gouging. And those two bills are going to give Washingtonians what they deserve. Accountability of this industry and accountability of stopping them from this outrageous pollution. And we will not allow them to excuse their pollution, claiming they're going to go bankrupt. What a bunch of hogwash. This is the most profitable industry in human history. They dwarf profits from anywhere else. One would think that companies would have 1 ounce of social responsibility instead of using excuses to try to increase their profits. We will not stand for that. And I believe Washingtonians have had a belly full of this price gouging, and we're here to take action. Now, behind me, I have a group of people that are going to be working with us. Senator Wynn, Representative Fitzgibbon, Senator Saldana, Representative Orval, Representative Stearns. We have Yolanda, who will be speaking from SEIU. We have firefighters, representatives IBEW, who have job creation going through the roof, electrifying transportation in our homes. We have climate solutions. And we have solutions to this problem of the oil and gas industry all around us. I just came from a new building for Department of Labor and Industries. It uses a heat pump where we can get clean in-ground heating and cooling instead of paying these outrageous prices that they're charging us from the fossil fuel industry. It's a beautiful thing. 2 days ago, I was in Spokane, where we just had 11 electric buses open up a new line. These are the solutions that we are today accommodating with our cap and invest bill. But that cap and invest bill needs to stand, and we should not yield an inch to these rapacious oil and gas companies that are now using an excuse. Instead, we should hold them accountable for their outrageous pricing. Now, we're not against profits, but we're against price gouging. And we intend to get to the heart of what's really going on here. You know, these oil companies have been trying to blame the fact that we're holding them accountable for pollution, when in fact, these prices went up because they shut down their pipeline. We listened to AAA, who told us that the reason they've had this excuse, they shut down the pipeline in the middle of summer. And if you listen to AAA, they'll tell us that that's really what's going on on top of these outrageous prices that we're having. So I'm glad that we're going to stand up for transparency. I'm glad we're going to stand up for clean air. And I'm glad we got a great team that's going to make sure that we have both those values in the state of Washington. With that, I want to introduce Senator Wynn, represents my old district because I'm a son of white senator. And he's a person who's always been fighting for working people. And we're here fighting for working people for fairness at the pump. And Joe, come on up and tell me what your plans are.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Well, thank you so much for coming out. We're not quite in the 34th district, but we're nearby. So it's an honor to be here with the Highline School District, simply because I'm a product of the Highline Schools as well. Went to Cascade, same school as the governor did, but also went to Hazel Valley Elementary as a young student. And I remember back then, I had a couple of best friends that were pretty close, Brett, John, Aaron. And what we all had in common was that we all had asthma. And at that point, nobody really knew about environmental justice. Nobody knew about how tailpipes emits noxious gas. We all just happened to live nearby each other, near the highway on a busy road, and we all happened to have asthma and had to carry inhalers around. I don't want that for my kids. I don't want that for anybody's kids. And I want to ensure that Washington State has clean air and clean water for the future as well. And what we're asking for today is radical transparency. We want radical transparency. As we work towards a cleaner, greener economy, we want to make sure that everybody, especially those who are most burdened by pollution, are also part of that solution as well. So we have to hold everybody accountable for our actions to ensure that Washington State can meet our climate goals so that we can have a prosperous future for our kids as well. And part of that means ensuring that we have policies to vet, and if there are problematic behaviors, have a mechanism for us to address those. We've already seen policies in California. We've seen policies at the federal level doing similar things. What's interesting is that the policies in California, right when they were being implemented, California gas prices went down and the Washington states went up. Might have been a coincidence, I don't know. But at the same time, we need to have that radical transparency here in Washington state, and that's what we're going to bring for this next cycle. We have staff preparing a suite of legislation to ensure that Washingtonians are protected, to ensure that Washingtonians' rights are being heard and being met, and to ensure that as we are adjusting to this green economy, we're doing so in a thoughtful way. And what this graph shows you is that clearly there's other factors that are at play. In fact, today, even before climate policies were in place, the profit margins per gallon of fuel in Washington state is 10 times higher than that in Texas, just as is. So we've been experiencing undue pressure from oil companies for a long time, and it's no longer acceptable. Pollution is no longer free in Washington state, and we will ensure that everybody gets held accountable for their actions. Thank you so much.
We got Joe Fitzgibbon here.
Governor and Senator Wynn. I'm Joe Fitzgibbon. I also represent the 3/4 District just north of here. And before we passed the Climate Commitment Act, big emitters like oil companies used to be able to pollute for free. But when we passed the Climate Commitment Act in 2021, we required them to pay for allowances to cover their emissions and to deal with the harms that those emissions cause our state. And we're investing those payments that they made in transforming our energy systems and in transforming our state to be ready for a cleaner future, with incentives for heat pumps so that Washingtonians can cool and heat their homes and businesses cheaply and cleanly. And we know that as temperatures rise, more Washingtonians than ever are really going to need air conditioning to be able to live in a safe temperature. And thanks to the incentives that we're providing for heat pumps, that'll be accessible and affordable to more people. With incentives for converting heavy-duty vehicles like freight trucks and school buses, we're standing here in front of Highline School District's brand new electric school buses, to electricity, to save them costs on fuel, to spare our air, to spare our lungs, especially the lungs of children for whom we know that the harms of that pollution can impact their overall health and their brain development, and to spare our climate. And improving the health of our forests so that we see fewer wildfires and smoke events like those that are impacting the eastern United States this year, but that have suffocated us in the past. To keep all of us safe, but to particularly keep our hardworking firefighters safe. And I also want to thank Senator Rebecca Saldana for her leadership on that. In addressing childhood asthma, which you heard about from Senator Wynn, particularly in communities like the one we're in here, the communities that surround SeaTac Airport, which have disproportionately high rates of childhood asthma. And I really want to thank Representative Tina Orwell, in whose district we are today, for her leadership on that. In giving Washingtonians better, cleaner, cheaper transportation choices like transit, safe walking, safe biking, high-speed rail, projects everything from the Olympic Discovery Trail and the Olympic Peninsula to the new city line in the city of Spokane that you heard about from Governor Inslee. In improved HVAC systems at schools and child care centers from Puyallup to Spokane, improving air quality both indoor and outdoors. And these are just a few examples of the many things that we're investing, the payments that oil companies and other large emitters have been required to make to the state under the Climate Commitment Act. We're not going backwards on these investments. We're going to keep holding big emitters accountable, including oil companies. And the smart ones will move fast to produce cleaner fuels and reduce their CCA compliance obligations. And for them, the state is here as a partner to help them move as fast as possible to a clean future. For the ones that drag their heels, we will be holding them responsible, both for their pollution and for their record profits they're earning at the expense of Washingtonians. Now I'd like to turn it over to Yolanda King-Lowe, a healthcare worker on the front lines of dealing with the health impacts of climate change.
I want to thank Governor Inslee for inviting me today. My name is Yolanda King-Lowe. I'm a healthcare worker, and I'm also Secretary Treasurer of SEIU 1199 Northwest. I'm really here to talk about the impact of the climate change, the health and equity impacts that it has. Also, we want to be thinking about, for climate change, about the different communities. What community is really impacted by that? It's communities where folks that live in that community look like me, BIPOC communities. Our 32,000 members, they care and they work with patients every day that's impacted by climate change, whether it's respiratory, cardiac, cancers, maternal and infants are impacted, mental health, and the list goes on. We also know that our members treat folks that are injured by floods, extreme weather conditions, fires, and we also saw what happened with COVID-19. We also saw the communities that were much more marginalized than others. It was BIPOC communities. We talk a lot about healthcare disparities. Let's talk about air quality inequities. I work with our members every day to secure and negotiate contracts. And we know these are big corporations that focus a lot on their profits. So 2 things I know, big corporations that focus on their profits. The other thing that I do know is that when we collectively stand together, that we're able to build a power that's able to move the boss in a way to be able to get the things that we need. So we talk a lot about climate control and BIPOC communities that's been impacted by what's going on. And so I'm not okay with that, and I don't think that we should, none of us should be okay with it. And I also think it's a really simple solution. So here I'm standing in 3 different capacities. One is I'm a healthcare worker. I think that everyone deserves to have good health. 2, as a union leader, I think it's only right for working families to be financially secure, not oil companies. And 3, I'm standing here, I'm a Black woman, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, so many different things to many people. And I'm tired of my community bearing the brunt of what's happening with climate control, climate change, and the air pollution. I want to thank again Governor Inslee for inviting me here today. I do want to say I want to thank you for your leadership. I also want to say that I'm here to stand with you and the people and not the oil companies.
A couple comments, thanks to all the speakers and the work we're going to do together. You know, I think Washingtonians rightfully can feel angry about this situation. And the reason for their anger is not just that you're paying through the nose for gas at the pump. It's because these companies deceived people for decades. They knew what they were going to do to the planet. They knew their pollution is going to give kids asthma. They knew it's going to cause these heat domes and disasters around the globe. They knew it. They knew it all along, and they lied to us. And now they turn around and tell us they're going to go bankrupt if we hold them responsible. Well, Chevron's not bankrupt. What's morally bankrupt is trying to escape moral responsibility for the damage you're causing to this planet and to our state. And we won't stand for it. So we need to channel this anger into action, which is to force these companies to open their books and to have a mechanism, if we find price gouging, to rein it in. That's what we intend to do in January. Happy to stand up questions. Let's go around this way. There's the farthest in the orange there.
How will the speed of legislation specifically work to lower fuel prices that normal consumers pay? You say there are mechanisms to stop price gouging. What are those?
So 2 ways. There are two mechanisms, both important. The first is to force these companies to show what the real numbers are. They have refused to do this. And what do they tell us? They tell us they're going to go bankrupt. That's what they're trying to tell us publicly. Baloney. Show us your books about how you're going bankrupt just because you're held accountable for pollution. That's number one, to get to the bottom of this. But number 2, assuming we find that in fact they are having these unacceptable levels of profit, we can have a commission to restrain those prices. This is what California did. It's a state commission to get to the bottom of this and have penalties for oil companies if in fact they're abusing motorists and consumers. Both of those can work. Now, Joe and our 2 Joes are fantastic. They put the best climate policies in place, and I'm confident that they can fashion both of those things. Joe, you guys want to add anything? Okay, yeah.
Governor, GOP lawmakers have said that there are things that the Department of Ecology or the state can do right now to alleviate some of the pressure of the pump. You're talking about legislation in January, it's currently July. Is there anything, they've talked about increasing the supply of carbon credits to reduce prices and extending timelines. Is that anything that you could support to sort of alleviate things for drivers right now?
Listen, we are doing things, and one of which is to hold these companies accountable to reduce the prices. That's what we're talking about today. We want to give drivers relief. We want to go to the heart of this problem, which is the greed and avarice of these oil companies who are still not telling us the truth. That's the most powerful thing we can do. Second, we are moving forward to try to build a larger market of our carbon credits. The larger the market is, the less cost there is associated with the Climate Commitment Act. So we're doing those two powerful things. But you need to understand the little sneakiness of the Republican legislators you referred to. They don't want to be honest with you what they're doing. What they're doing is they want to reduce the protection of Washingtonians against pollution. They want to allow more pollution. We are against more pollution. We have effectively set a cap on our skies to protect our children from this pollution. They don't want to be honest with you, but that's what they're doing when they want to say they want to increase these credits. What that means is they want to allow these companies that made $11 billion in profits to put more pollution into the sky. We're against that. Our kids have suffered enough. We got enough asthma. We got enough heat domes. We got enough disasters. So no, that's a non-starter.
We're currently seeing some of the highest gas prices in the country. How soon could drivers see relief at the pump? And is there anything that can be done with the state gas tax?
Well, I think there's a chance in the relatively near future that we may see some relief because the oil companies, the real reason, according to the AAA, that there has been an increase on top of their outrageous profits is they shut down the pipeline during the summer months. That reduced supply, that drives up costs. And that pipeline is going to come back, and when it comes back, there's a fair chance that these prices can be ameliorated. But we can't wait for January. We want to get to January as fast as we can so we can restrain these profits. That's where the real money is we think is in these outrageous profits.
Governor, it's no secret that prices for gas became the highest in the nation. The timing coincided with the cap and invest auctions beginning. All due respect to Senator Wynn, same thing happened in California. Prices went up after they started cap and trade. Do you feel like there's any role that Olympia is playing in terms of these gas prices going up, that it's not just all the oil companies?
Well, we're talking about what we can do about this effectively. And we can do two things. Number one, restrain their pollution. This is their toxic material that their product is putting into the air we breathe. And we can restrain that. Second, we can restrain these outrageous profits, which we intend to do. Third, we want to build a mechanism that can be effective in reducing the costs of these credits by having a large market. Merging our market with California and Quebec, that can restrain the cost of these credits. Those things, I believe, in combination can help consumers and people who want to breathe. And I have found it's kind of unanimous in the state of Washington, we like to breathe. So it's a pretty consensual position.
But in the meantime, the oil companies are passing on those added costs of the credits.
No, they're not passing on. This is profit on top of everything they spend, folks. This is $35 million bonus to the Exxon CEO when he went from $2 billion profit to $11 billion. They're not just passing it on, they're padding their pockets with this. And that's what's outrageous. They haven't just increased their numbers because of the cap and trade, which by the way have always been high in the Northwest because we are kind of an island of supply. And these companies, as Joe said, their profit margin in the Pacific Northwest is 10 to 20 times higher than the profit margin in other states. We have been victimized for years, not just now. And another thing I want to point out, go listen to what AAA said about this. They shut down the pipeline. That's what AAA said is what really was contemporaneous with these price increases.
Two questions. first sort of continue on what he was chewing away at. One of the main criticisms against cap and trade and with Senator Gwynn and Representative Fitzgibbon are on the kitchen as well, go ahead, is that you should have anticipated the increase in gasoline prices. Essentially, the sort of thing you tax something and therefore the entity being taxed will pass it on to his customers. It's sort of a basic economic fact of life. And you could criticize for not anticipating that. Throwing that at you for a response.
Well, first off, we did the best we could to estimate the impact. We looked at the California experience and tried to estimate it. But you can't ask the legislator to solve every problem in one session. They solved the problem or went a long ways to address, to hold companies accountable for pollution. Now in this session, we intend to hold them accountable for this price gouging, and I believe that's what we can actually get done this session. You guys want that one? Yeah.
Yeah, I think for that particular question itself as well, we are seeing legislation in California, and there's actually legislation at the federal level. My team discussed a policy similar to this early on. Let's be very clear, if the oil companies actually decarbonize and meet their targets, they don't have to pay anything, right? And also, the first compliance obligation is not until 2024. So what we're seeing is a front loading of what seems to be price gouging. So the reason why these policies weren't in place yet is that we're seeing what the federal level was doing. We're seeing what California is doing. We're going to build from their knowledge as well, and now we're going to bring together a proposal for this next session. What I did not anticipate was how aggressive the oil companies were, and that's on us. But at the same time, we are committed to decarbonizing. And again, if they choose to decarbonize and stop polluting, and mind you, there was great reporting in the Seattle Times, the line item for which they put this cost to them is the same as oil spills. The same way they're required to pay for oil spills, they have to pay for pollution as well. So just don't pollute.
I want to add something to that as well. Look, the oil industry has resisted our effort to save ourselves from their pollution. That's what this is about. And instead of increasing their investment in clean energy, they've actually decreased it in the last several months. At the same time we're experiencing these disasters, two things are happening. They've been raising their profits, and they have been decreasing their investment in renewable energy. And they just figure they can ride this out, they can weaken these laws, they can increase the number of permits so we get more pollution, and just go about their merry way. We're saying that's not good enough for the state of Washington. Yeah.
Do you believe that Washington State is being targeted by these oil and gas companies? Because we haven't seen the same increases outside of east of the Cascades or to the south in the 7-month period since the Cap and Invest program began. So do you believe this is punitive?
Well, we have to realize what goes into costs is complex. There's a lot of things been going on in the world. The Ukraine war, just disruption in oil supply. They shut down the pipeline. It serves Western Washington, okay? So the pipeline that serves Western Washington, they shut down and they reduced the supply. And when you reduce the supply, costs can go up. Then they tried to blame it on our ability to hold them accountable for pollution. In Eastern Washington, that has another source of supply where they didn't shut down the pipeline, we don't have the highest gas prices in the nation. So if you want to look for a real reason this has happened recently, it's they shut down the pipeline. Oregon's prices went up as well. California has gone up to some degree. But we have always been victimized because we're kind of an island here. We only get it from kind of one source. That's why the profits internationally have gone up. And it's why their profits in Washington are 10 to 20 times higher than other states. We're not going to force them into bankruptcy. We're going to expect them to be accountable.
So is that
We only have time for one more question.
One more right there. John, you had one.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Martin Bear with the Burien News, getting it down real local. We have a number of small family-owned gas stations that are really struggling to get by. What are these policies going to do to those small family-owned filling stations?
It'll reduce the cost they have to pay to the refiners for their product. it will allow them to have happier customers. And we aim to do that, to restrain these prices. That's our goal. And I believe when I grew up in White Center, Burien was considered the Paris of Washington. So we'd like to help out Burien. Thanks very much. We'll see you in January. Good things are going to happen.